joining.
Here we go.
I see a Vic too now.
Yeah.
Hi, Vic.
Got a lot of people jumping in here. We're going to give it a minute. I heard a hi, Vic, but we don't see Vic's mic unmuted, so that's okay. Hello, Vic. Awesome. All right, we're going to give it just a minute because I know a lot of people still jumping in here, so we're monitoring the doorbell that can be heard on our side. And I hope everybody is ready for a fantastic presentation. I have been looking forward to this. So much great information. There's a lot going on right now. And so I'll let a couple more people in here. And I do want to make a quick announcement, and then we're just going to jump right over into our amazing spotlight speakers today. So I do want to thank a big thank you, shout out to Akin, Gump, Strauss, Hauer. They are actually our spotlight speaker today, and they are the sponsor for the Coffee Connection. So I do want to say a big thank you. And a lot of great information is going to be heard today. I'm going to right away put a link into Akin Gump's website, and they also have a newsletter that is very, very informative. So I'm going to go ahead and put a link into our chat for that. And then Sheila is handling a lot of the behind the scenes and allowing people to come in. So with that, like I said, I'm going to keep it short because I really do want to jump right over to the spotlight speakers. We have Jennifer Richter today. We have Virginia Heiner-Entbes, Nicole Farland, Sharina Saram, and I want to welcome you and thank you very much for joining us today and sharing this amazing topic with us on the Coffee Connection. So let's just kick this off. I'm going to jump right in with Jennifer. I'm going to make you spotlight for everyone, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Desi and Sharon and everyone in the organization that helps to make this possible, including people in our organization that really help us to get these presentations together and on time for you all. FAA reauthorization is such a huge topic this year in 2024. We have boiled it down to a small number of slides, but there is a lot to know. And I think depending on your particular outlook, we may or may not hit the things that are most top of mind for you, but these are the things that we thought were really remarkable in the FAA reauthorization bill. So again, as Desi said, I'm Jennifer Richter, and I chair the telecom, media, and technology practice here at Akin. Akin is a global law firm, but we've been involved in the UAS industry really since the commercial beginning, 11, 12, 13 years ago, and working closely with industry and government on how do we come up with the right policies and regulations that will really enable this industry. So every 5 years when the FAA does their FAA reauthorization, it's an opportunity for Congress to look at what has the progress been of the FAA and the Department of Transportation to help enable this new industry among all of the other bigger aviation priorities, and what do we need to do for the future. And so I'm real excited that we'll have an opportunity to give you a bit of an overview today. These slides, of course, will be available, and then our team has put together a really nice client alert as well, and that will go out probably tomorrow. So if any of you want to get on our list to receive our client alerts, please just send us a note and we'll make sure that you get on there. And of course, as Desi said, we have our autonomous Akin newsletter, and that's a great resource too, but the client alerts are a little bit of a deeper dive in particular topics. So with that, Sharanya, if you'll advance us. This is what we're going to cover today. So a little bit of background on the reauthorization bill this year, the congressional focus on FAA programs and committees, the congressional priorities for UAS in particular, so integration into the NAS, adoption of uniform performance and risk-based licensing procedures, comprehensive operational rules, and promotional security and cybersecurity. that seems to be an issue that continues to dog us as we move ahead, and it's an important issue. So glad that that's continuing to get some airtime with our regulators and legislators. Then we'll cover congressional priorities for advanced air mobility, establishing the AAM leadership and facilitate airspace entry. And then finally, we'll talk about other congressional priorities, including developing wireless infrastructure that will support this new industry. And as you all know, that's an area that we've spent a lot of time here at Akin, fostering interagency coordination around emerging aviation, which is so important. It's important just for regular aviation too, not just emerging. Then the research and development, really happy to see a lot of funding focused there. And then development of our aviation workforce. As we all know, that needs a lot of work. So that really has been a big priority. Okay, next slide. So the FAA reauthorization for 2024. So it was signed into law on May 16th. Our last FAA reauthorization was in 2018, and we, theoretically should have had a new one in 2023. That didn't happen. And so, as you all know, we've had a number of short-term extensions leading up to this very big bill. This bill is 1,083 pages long. The table of contents, just the table of contents, is 12 pages long, which is longer than our client alert. So there is a lot in this bill. And if you haven't had a chance to look at it, I really want to encourage you to just spend some time with the table of contents, which is an exercise that our team went through one day. We just went through the whole thing and talked about what we thought was important or interesting. And then that's how we sort of started to do our work on the client alert that's coming and this presentation we're giving you. So in 2018, the amount of money set aside for the FAA through the 2018 FAA reauthorization was $90 billion. This year it's more, it's $105 billion in appropriations, and you can see here how that is divided. So the biggest part is $66.7 billion for key safety programs. That's like air traffic control and aircraft certification and some of the basics for the agency. $17.8 billion for key technologies and systems and modernizing those, so important. $19.35 for airport infrastructure improvements, and $1.59 billion for research and development to keep us competitive in this global race for innovation and sustainable aerospace technology. I think we can go to the next one. Oh, but actually, and before I get into this, I just wanted to read you something that was really interesting. And Sharani, it's okay, you can move to the next one. But Transportation and Infrastructure Chair Sam Graves, when this FAA reauthorization was released, had some, I thought, really inspiring words about the bill that I just wanted to share. He said, the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2024 is one of the farthest reaching, most consequential pieces of legislation this House will consider in the 118th Congress. For over a century, the United States has led the world in aviation safety and innovation, and this bill is critical to ensuring America remains the global leader in aviation. It's vital to our economy, to millions of American jobs, and to the millions of passengers that depend on our national airspace system every day. This comprehensive bill improves our aviation system safety, infrastructure, and workforce. It will enhance the FAA's efficiency and the overall passenger experience while encouraging domestic innovation in aviation. So I really thought that hit all of the big priorities that we're about to talk about today. And nice job by Congressperson Sam Graves. Okay, so the congressional focus on special programs and committees. There are these sort of 6 areas where there is renewed focus for FAA programs and committees. We've got some new on some of these, and 4 of them are new. So a new Advanced Aviation Technology and Innovation Steering Committee, a new Unmanned and Autonomous Flight Advisory Committee. The Beyond program is extended indefinitely. That's been a real success. The UAS Test Range program also extended, and now up to 9 sites, which is really great. The Future of Next Gen, and then a new Airspace Modernization Office, and also important to this group, a new Women in Aviation Advisory Committee, And the real focus there is to bring more women into the aviation workforce and aviation as a career, because our percentages are so low in the industry today. So this is a nice new focus on committees that Congress really thinks are important. Okay, let's go to the next one. And then this is the last slide I'm going to cover, and then I'm going to hand over to Nicole McFarland. So integration of UAS into the NAS, so many things that we need, right? So remote ID was a big accomplishment a number of years ago, but there's still lingering concern about how does the remote ID rule become satisfied if you're using an alternative means of compliance, including network-based remote ID. And we've been debating this. We debated it all through the remote ID arc, and we've been debating it ever since. This is quite important, and I'm really happy to see that Congress also views this as important and wants there to be a focus on how do we meet that remote ID rule, lots of different ways, not just the way that was initially passed through the broadcast technology. So ADS-B, we all know that ADS-B is a really foundational and important technology with respect to aviation today. How can we use ADS-B out equipment to support that vehicle-to-vehicle link that we need, whether it's man-to-man, man to UAS, UAS to man, all of the ways that we need to be telling other people in the air where we are, how are we going to do it? And so there's this study that's been authorized to look at these issues. They're very important, I think. There's also a report that the FAA administrator needs to do under Section 810 on the development of low-cost voluntary ADS-B adoption and to facilitate traffic awareness, as I just said. And then there's this Section 906 directing a study on technologies to allow UAS to detect and avoid crewed aircraft operating below 500 feet AGL when they're not equipped with a transponder or ADS-B out. So this sort of electronic conspicuity that, there are many working groups in the industry working on that. So, detect and avoid, see and avoid, that's, ADS-B is all about this. And how can we use this foundational technology from aviation to really help advance the UAS industry too, and improve safety overall? And then finally, Section 924 directs the FAA to develop a comprehensive plan for integration of UAS into the NAS. Hooray, a lot of these things take time. I can't believe how much time it takes. I think I underestimated it when I first started to work in this industry, but I'm happy to see that there is this continued focus in these areas. These are very important, but of course there are many others. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Nicole McFarland.
Thank you.
Forward. You bet.
We have a question in our chat. Do you want to address that now, Jennifer, or would we want to wait until you move on?
If it's okay, let's look at the questions when we're at the end. And again, this deck isn't super long, so I think we should have plenty of time at the end to answer questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. And it's great to be here with you all today. On this slide, we've grouped some of the sections that demonstrate the prioritization of licensing procedures. And we'll start out here with Section 908, which directs the FAA to make a number of improvements to the Part 107 waiver process. And among other things, it directs the FAA to adopt a performance and risk-based approach to reviewing waiver requests. And Congress was pretty clearly looking here to streamline and standardize the review process for Part 107. And this section includes several specific provisions aimed at that. So for example, the FAA is directed to publish all existing waivers publicly and is permitted to streamline approval for requests that are substantially similar to existing or already granted waivers. This section also prohibits the use of open-ended descriptive prompts in the application and directs the FAA to establish an expedited review process for renewal and modification applications. And then continuing on the theme of improvements to application procedures, Section 208 addresses FAA applications more generally, directing the Deputy Administrator to consider implementing a public dashboard on the FAA website that would permit parties to track the status of pending applications. And the Deputy Administrator will be required to report back to the Administrator and to Congress with takeaways from that effort. And then finally, on this slide, we have Section 932, which addresses third-party service provider approvals. And it directs the FAA to establish procedures, possibly via a rulemaking, but a rulemaking is not required, to approve third-party UAS service suppliers within the next year. And the term third-party service suppliers is defined to include providers of UAS service, supplemental data, infrastructure, things like ground-based surveillance, command and control, information exchange, and so on. And this approval process is directed to make use of industry consensus standards like the ASTM UAS Traffic Management Supplier Interoperability Standard. And with that, I think we can move on to the next slide. So another congressional priority that we are seeing is the development of comprehensive operational rules. And sections 930 and 931 address the much anticipated BVLOS rulemaking. Pursuant to these sections, Congress has directed the FAA to publish its BVLOS Notice of Proposed Rulemaking within 4 months, which takes us to September of this year, and then to publish a final rule within 16 months, which is September of 2025. The NPRM must establish acceptable levels of risk for BVLOS operations, standards for remote pilots, a process to approve or accept aircraft and associated elements, which can allow for but not require type certification, and then protocols for networked information exchange, like the network-based remote IT that was just covered. So next we'll turn to operation over the high seas, and this section directs the FAA to work with other civil aviation authorities to develop and implement approval procedures to permit UAS operation over the high seas. And in case you, like me, weren't aware, the high seas are defined in international law as all parts of the ocean that aren't included in the economic zone, territorial sea, or internal waters of a country, and they actually make up about 50% of the Earth's surface. And there's actually quite a bit of focus on operation of UAS over water in FAA REAUTH generally this year. Sharanya is going to cover another provision here shortly that's aimed at operation over the Gulf of Mexico. So really a focus there. Finally, on this slide, the bill addresses recreational operations, directing the FAA to approve certain fixed sites for recreational UAS use. The bill includes some operational procedures for recreational flight and permits some drone use by elementary and secondary schools, making it easier to bring drones into the classroom. And with that, we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So finally, on UAS specific priorities, there is continued focus from Congress on national security and cybersecurity. And this played out in the form of another restriction on the use of certain foreign-made drones. So Section 936 of the bill prohibits DOT from entering into or renewing contracts for the procurement or operation of covered foreign drones, including those manufactured by entities that are either domiciled in or controlled by China, Russia, Iran, and several other countries that are listed here on the slide. It is important to note, though, that this section only applies to the use of UAS by DOT itself or by its contractors. This does not restrict foreign drone use more broadly. And then we have Section 217, which directs the FAA to designate an executive to be responsible for cybersecurity of FAA systems. And the tasks for this role will actually include convening a new aviation rulemaking committee on civil aircraft cybersecurity. And the group will consider aircraft ground support information systems, air traffic control mission systems, aeronautical products, and so on. And the ARC is specifically required to include stakeholders from aircraft manufacturers, air carriers, airports, UAS operators, service suppliers and manufacturers, manufacturers of powered lift aircraft, and a few other specific categories of stakeholders. And so with that, I will hand it over to Virginia to discuss AAM.
So, so there's several provisions in the bill that are designed to promote the development of advanced air mobility, which for those, I'm sure most of you have heard that term, but it's an umbrella term for aircraft that are highly automated and electric. So things like air taxis and eVTOLs. And as many of you probably know, this is ultimately envisioned as a solution for everything from transporting cargo and passengers to supporting public safety, like firefighting and search and rescue missions. So this bill really emphasizes the need to establish U.S. leadership in this area. Obviously, these are really promising technologies, and there's a growing sense that we may be falling behind globally, especially as other countries like China are having more success getting these technologies off the ground, so to speak. So Section 952 lays out a set of priorities that Congress wants the FAA to focus on here. And those include prioritizing work on type certification for powered lift aircraft, developing new rules to enable commercial operations, working with global partners to encourage the acceptance of AAM products, and working with industry and other stakeholders to kind of take the steps that are needed to enable the safe entry of these aircraft into the NAS. So in line with these priorities, the bill directs the FAA to take further action on a few specific items. One of those is adopting final rules for powered lift aircraft in Section 955. So last June, the FAA issued a notice of proposed rulemaking that proposed new rules for training and certifying pilots of powered lift aircraft and rules for how those aircraft should be allowed to operate. But no final rules have been issued, and now we're at a year later. So this bill gives the FAA a 7-month deadline to get those finalized and published. Congress also wants the FAA to focus on supporting the implementation of powered lift aircraft. So Section 957 of the bill directs the FAA to start coming up with some short-term and long-term solutions that will allow powered lift aircraft to safely be integrated into the NAS. And as part of this, the FAA will be required to really take a look at and start evaluating the impact that these operations might have on air traffic control, and to start updating its orders and guidance on this if it determines that changes are necessary. And another big area of focus here is the infrastructure that's needed to support vertical flight. And the bill includes several provisions addressing infrastructure, and in particular takeoff and landing facilities like vertiports. So on that point, Section 958 requires the FAA to publish an advisory circular with some guidance on vertiport design, and also to update the existing heliport design advisory circular, provide more guidance there. It also requires the FAA to come up with a mechanism by which existing infrastructure operators like airport operators can start safely accommodating powered lift aircraft at those facilities as well. Section 960 also focuses on infrastructure. So going back a little bit, in the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2023, Congress allocated funding for an advanced air mobility infrastructure pilot program, and that awards planning grants to municipalities and other entities that want to develop this type of infrastructure to support AAM. And the reauthorization bill extends this program for an additional 2 years, so it's now effective through 2026. Next slide. So another area of focus in the reauthorization bill is the development of the wireless infrastructure that's needed to support aviation. And this is definitely something that is very top of mind in the drone world. As we have discussed in some of our previous presentations that we've given for this group, drone operators are already starting to use commercial wireless networks to support their operations, and the FCC is already doing a lot of work on this on their side to try and identify spectrum that can be used for UAS, notably the 5030 to 5091 megahertz band. So on this note, Section 318 directs the FAA to enter into an agreement with the national academies to start studying potential conflicts between different uses of radio spectrum by aviators and wireless telecommunications networks. Congress is really pushing the FAA in this section to start ensuring that it has some internal processes in place to review proposed spectrum reallocations and to review FCC auction decisions, just to ensure that safety in the NAS is not compromised as we continue down this path. Separately, Section 613 directs the FAA to start evaluating whether it should add satellite voice communication services to the Aeronautical Mobile Communications Program. And that program delivers air traffic control messages in remote areas like over the ocean and remote continental airspace. So the intention there is to kind of help strengthen those communications. And one thing I just find kind of interesting is this seems to be sort of building on some developments that are happening in the telecom world, where several major wireless providers are starting to partner up with satellite companies to provide what is called supplemental coverage from space, which is basically just like satellite coverage to fill the gaps in more remote areas where commercial wireless networks lack service. So this development could kind of like build on something similar to that. And this section also provides some guidance on how the FAA should analyze and implement this new technology. So that's just another interesting area to keep an eye on. And then finally, section 621 directs the FAA to establish a program to develop a remote tower system. And what that remote tower system would do is basically rely on wireless telecommunications infrastructure to enable air traffic operations. The bill directs the FAA to prioritize certain airports for this. So that includes airports that don't already have a permanent air traffic control tower, and airports that provide small or rural community air service. As part of this program, the FAA will be required to brief Congress on the status of the remote and digital tower projects that are being developed, and on any issues that come up during the process related to the demand for this type of technology and the ways that it's being used. With that, I will turn it over to Sharanya.
Thank you, Virginia. So the FAA Reauthorization Act also includes key provisions to ensure that the agency facilitates interagency cooperation in regards to aviation safety and emerging aviation. So section 627 requires the FAA administrator to begin a rulemaking process to establish or update as appropriate low altitude routes and flight procedure to ensure safe rotorcraft and powered lift aircraft operations in the national airspace system. The focus of this section, according to Congress, is to provide direct, safe, and reliable routes that ensure sufficient separation from higher altitude fixed wing aircraft traffic. The FAA has to work with different industry groups in order to make this rulemaking. Another section, section 1026, directs the FAA to consult with the National Telecommunications and Information Administration and the Federal Communications Commission in order to study the effective and efficient use of radio frequency spectrum in the civil aviation domain for aircraft, unmanned aircraft systems, and advanced air mobility. The object of this study includes reallocating or repurposing radio frequency spectrum that may impact the safety of civil aviation. The study will also look at measures to identify risks and protect against spectrum interference in frequency bands that are used in civil aviation operations in order to ensure public safety. Sections 1042 through 1045 have a broad mandate, and they direct the National Science and Technology Council to designate an interagency working group on AAM and UAS in order to coordinate federal research, development, testing, and educational activities. This interagency group will include senior representatives from NASA, the Department of Transportation, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the National Science Foundation, NIST, and the Department of Homeland Security, among other federal agencies. The group is directed to develop and periodically update a strategic plan for federal research on these topics. And consistent with this plan, the FAA is directed to coordinate with these agencies to carry out and support the research on the safe integration of UAS and AAM in the national airspace system. The Act also emphasizes research and development, and they have several unique initiatives announced through the various funding initiatives. For example, Section 766 provides the option for the FAA to conduct a study regarding the feasibility and economic viability of autonomous or electric powered track systems at airports. Section 937 directs the FAA to prioritize authorizing a UAS test range located in a state bordering the Gulf of Mexico. And I think I did see a question on this in the chat, so this is half an answer to that. And so basically the FAA is prioritizing this test range on the border of the Gulf of Mexico in order to identify the challenges associated with operations over large bodies of water. They also want to analyze how to provide the transportation of cargo and passengers to offshore energy infrastructure, as well as assess the impacts of operations in saltwater environments. Section 1007 directs the FAA to establish a credentialing authority that they're going to call Assured Safe. And this will offer standards, education, and testing for the use of UAS by first responders, for uniform communications, operational, and reporting standards for civilian, military, and international allies and partners, and any other relevant standards as needed. Section 1024 directs the FAA to conduct a review of artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies in order to improve airport efficiency and machinery, such as examination of the application of these technologies to jet bridges, airport service vehicles on airport movement areas, aircraft taxi, air traffic control operations, and any other areas deemed necessary to improve airport efficiency and safety. So our last slide today is what this group, I hope, would think is the most important slide, which is that the FAA Act has a strong prioritization on aviation workforce development and acknowledges gaps in this space. Most importantly, Section 403 establishes the Bessie Coleman Women in Aviation Advisory Committee. This is an incredibly important step, as less than 10% of pilots are women and less than 3% of those are airline captains. So the Women in Aviation Advisory Committee will be established within 6 months of the enactment of the Act. This committee will advise the FAA administrator on matters and policies related to promoting the recruitment, retention, employment, education, training, career advancement, and well-being of women in the aviation industry, as well as for aviation-focused federal civil service positions. The committee will operate with significant input from industry members, including UAS operators and institutions of higher education. Section 423 and 424 address youth access to aviation careers. So Section 423 authorizes a report regarding implementation of the recommendations of the Youth Access to American Jobs and Aviation Task Force. This task force was authorized by the 2018 FAA Act, and the recommendations of the task force included improving information access about careers in aviation and aerospace, collaborating across regions of FAA on outreach and workforce development programs, and increased opportunities for mentoring and apprenticeships in aviation. Section 424 addresses UAS collegiate training and indicates that the FAA administrator should use the Unmanned Aircraft System Collegiate Training Initiative to address skill gaps and staffing challenges, as well as support efforts to facilitate the safe integration of unmanned aircraft systems and other new airspace entrants into the national airspace system. Finally, Section 913 directs the Department of Transportation to establish a drone education and training grant program to support workforce training related to the operation of small UAS. Educational institutions can apply for grants from the Department of Transportation. And with that, I think we're turning to questions, so I will kick it back to the team.
That's great. Thank you, everybody. And maybe just to answer the question in the chat about the 2 new UAS test ranges, as Sharanya indicated, I think it's Section 937 that talks about wanting there to be at least 1 new test range adjacent to in the area of the Gulf of New Mexico. If you go to Section 925 of the FAA reauthorization, you'll find the language in particular about keeping the current 7 and then adding the 2 new, and they talk about a competitive bidding process to be set up for the new test ranges. So 1 in the Gulf of New Mexico and presumably 1 someplace else. So I hope that partially answers the question. There's also some language in the bill in various sections about, utilizing to the extent possible some of the NASA facilities for different functions and in different kinds of testing. So that's kind of interesting.
Oh,
What other questions do we have?
Great information. And yes, we do have some questions that have come up. Some of them have been answered. I believe the latest one was actually from Bill Johnson, and he had asked about the AAM intricacy work group that be an extension of the work being done by AAM IAWG already in place by executive actions. Will they be finishing the work this year?
Yeah, so I think they are required to finish their work this year, but I have to believe that the work of the existing group will form the foundation for the work of this new interagency working group. Certainly, they've done a lot of work over the last year or 2, so that'll be important to carry that work forward. Does anybody else on the team have any further information about that AAM working group? No. Okay. Yeah, good question.
All right, thank you, Bill. We did also have a question from Amy. You had mentioned in the beginning about material being available to you and reaching out to you to join the deeper dive. Can we put that information into the chat or the link to reaching out to you to get that information? There's the newsletter. There we
Yep.
go.
There's the newsletter, and I think Virginia put her email into the chat. Certainly that one works, but you can email any of us if you want to get on our client alert mailing list. So there are two lists. One is this newsletter, which goes to people that subscribe to that. And then the second is just subscribing to our general client alerts that go out related to aviation topics and communications topics, if that interests you. So just reach out to one of us and we'll connect you with the marketing department and get you on our list.
Awesome, awesome. Another one that was in our chat that did get answered was about DOT has no infrastructure to support UAS, and it looks like rolling forward there will be some things coming available or case studies. Is that, maybe we can elaborate a little bit more on the infrastructure side?
I'm not sure what kind of infrastructure in particular they're talking about. Are they talking about like government agency infrastructure to help support the programs, which certainly there's more funding for those initiatives, or are we talking about airport infrastructure?
I'm going to circle back to James, who asked that question.
So I can kind of elaborate, and I tell you what, I see that Jennifer and Nicole are all in, and Saranya and Virginia are all in DC. I mean, that's pretty incredible. I hope that you could have more success. But so I'm in the Michigan area, and I've worked in the Gulf of Mexico. I worked offshore, and I'm happy to hear that they're going to set up a flight zone out to the oil rigs that might be in the Gulf of Mexico. But here in Michigan, and I can speak for Ohio, Illinois, Wisconsin, they're really, DOT doesn't really have any real initiatives, and there's no funding at the governor of Michigan's level to really further UAS stuff. Now,
can I chime in there for a second? Because that's not the case in Ohio. I work for the Ohio DOT, and we have a UAS center that was set up 12 years ago by the governor, and we work on the small side and on the advanced air mobility side. But continue.
Okay, you'll have to unmute, James.
So I've kind of worked with the Department of Transportation in the state of Michigan and some of the different airports, and there's some real challenges in getting some of the airports like will run, and Detroit metro area is not going to probably buy into it because of the interference with air traffic control. So we got that challenge with the pilots. We also got the challenge within the infrastructure within the government. I know at NAVC, the captains, I was talking with at CR Space and talking with some of the UAS initiatives in the Army, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Navy. And to me, they're playing a little bit of catch up, but that's okay. We're getting there. I mean, this is kind of like a wild, wild west, but I still think DOT, there's still a lot of cost savings initiatives that DOT in Michigan could be employing UAS, but they're not. And I know when Hurricane Ian hit down in Florida, their infrastructure in Florida, they basically went out to, issuing 1099s to anybody and anybody, everybody and anybody that could fly a UAS and do it responsibly. You know, they subcontracted that out for a hurricane response. And so, you know, I see us doing the same thing in Oklahoma. The tornado alley, you know, where we could basically be launching drones to do roof inspections or search and rescue. And even, you know, I can even speak for the Coast Guard in the Great Lakes. The Coast, because I'm a Coast Guard flotilla commander, and the Coast Guard has no drones in this area.
Interesting.
And I run into a lot of resistance with the senior leadership, even the Commandant of the Coast Guard, on the use of drones, even though the Coast Guard bought 150 drones here last year. We still probably should be a little bit further ahead, but I think we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, maybe to your question about, you know, just starting with Michigan and the Michigan DOT and whether or not they can obtain funding to be able to have, you know, test ranges and UTM systems. I kind of like to hear from Helen, who posted in the comments about how Ohio has approached this, because, you know, a lot of people are clamoring for the federal dollars for lots of different purposes, but I do think a lot of this money goes to the states and they can decide how they want to use it. So it'll be interesting to know what Helen's experience is in Ohio.
Sure. So the Ohio UAS Center is part of ODOT. We were set up, I think, in 2012 by a governor decree. And for a long time, our funding was based off of what we call blue sign money, which is just, you know, the signs on the highway that advertise stuff. That money goes into a pool for various things, and we got some of that. But last year, we were able to demonstrate through our work doing bridge inspections, survey, all sorts of various things for the DOT and for other state agencies. We were able to demonstrate that we should be on the gas tax. So now we're on the gas tax, and we have a ton of funding at this point. We do a lot of work with AFRL, so the Air Force Research Lab, out of Wright Pat, and so we have a new facility called the National Advanced Air Mobility Center of Excellence, because everything has to have excellence at the end when you deal with the Air Force. So we're based out of Springfield, Ohio, and we have a testing range called Sky Vision. It's hooked into the radar systems at Springfield Beckley Airport, and so there are private companies that come and test things there. Kitty Hawk was there before they went out of business. We have Joby there. Joby's setting up an aircraft manufacturing facility actually in Dayton, just down the road. And we have beta testing there. Lots of others. Their black flies are actually flying this week at Springfield. So yeah, we have a ton of advanced air mobility happening around here. And it's funded through the DOT, but also through AFRL and other various federal pots of money. And also the city of Springfield chipped in for the new facility as well. So we've got local, state, and federal money going towards this.
Got it. And so, but was the focus on UAS advanced because the governor was really interested in having that kind of innovation in Ohio? Is that where it started, or was there a big lot?
So, yeah, I wasn't around at the beginning. I joined 5 years ago, but I think that Governor Kasich was the one who started it, and it was kind of I think we applied to be one of the first UAS test facilities, and we didn't get that. We didn't become a facility, but we got spun off. From that, and that's how we became a thing.
Got it.
Bill, I saw your hand go up as I passed you by there, and you put a comment in our chat. Did you want to open up?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I couldn't tell who was actually speaking to the Michigan lack of infrastructure. I thought that Mighty Fly, which is a UAS manufacturer, a startup that is working on a hybrid electric UAS with autonomy, is flying some beyond visual line of sight work in Michigan. I thought that they were working with the Michigan DOT. If I wrote an article on this back in the spring, and I believe that that's the case. So maybe they misstated it or expanded on it a little bit more than they really needed to.
No, I would agree with you. They have started that initiative, but we've been doing with UAS for about 20 years, or at least
Right.
I was active Navy. We were using UAS, and I just think it should be for a little bit further advanced.
Yeah.
I've
Okay.
been down to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and I've talked with some of the senior leadership in the Air Force. Wright-Patterson is a great place to start. I'd like to see the U.S. and I'm supposed to be in a meeting Friday morning with the Air Force Association. We're not going to talk about UAS. We're going to talk about spaceflight. But anyway, Desi, this is a great presentation. That's all I got.
Awesome. Well, I have to thank the team at Akin for that. That's for sure. Thank you for all this information. We do have another question in our chat that came up from Vic about section 916. It answers his question about section 915. Never mind. Oh, I missed the whole thing there, Vic. Sorry. He was asking questions about 916. And
Yeah,
so maybe
so-
we could elaborate a little bit more on 916.
Yeah. I think he's seeing it right. So 915 talks about terminating the charter of the Advanced Aviation Advisory Committee, and then 916 talks about creating within a year of the termination of that last committee, a new unmanned and autonomous flight advisory committee, and then talks through their duties and probably the process of how people get named. So it's supposed to have 12 members, and then, from all different constituencies that are actually set forth, and observers and reporting and all that stuff. So you can find information about that in section 916.
Awesome. There has been a lot of information that is presented here, and we're running out of time at this point, but can each of you maybe give us your takeaway as far as how you feel that this is going to help us moving forward in the future, maybe some of the hurdles that we still need to overcome?
Yeah, just broadly, I think that we're still talking about how do we accomplish remote ID? How do we best use ADSB? How do we integrate UAS into the NAS? I think these are questions we've been all working on and pondering with the government and in industry for over a decade. What kind of wireless infrastructure do we need? How do we improve the workforce for this? So I think, a lot of what we see here is mainstay issues that still need to be resolved, but good continued focus on it. And I feel real hopeful about that. What I love about what they've done in this FAA reauthorization is they do have a firm focus on the future and the next generation. And what are the technologies and energy sources and infrastructure and humans, including women, that are needed to advance our aviation industry, whether it's, UAS, AAM, or traditional aviation. And I think there really is that firm focus on the future in this FAA reauthorization. And that's something that we can all feel real hopeful about. As we know, it takes a long time for decisions to be made in this area. So just getting some of these topics front and center and creating programs and initiatives that can really look at them is important. So, and it's just the start on some things, and maybe just a continuation for many others, as I indicated earlier. So that's my take. Nicole, Virginia, Sharanya.
I think my takeaway, I was really encouraged to see some of the provisions in this. It just really seems like, there was a lot of controversy over some other things flights out of DCA Airport, and things like that. But there was really great progress for emerging aviation. And I think they really took seriously some of the concerns they were hearing. I mean, for instance, the provision sticks out in this section on Part 107 waivers that the FAA is no longer allowed to use open-ended descriptive questions that are deemed unnecessary. There's just a real effort here, I think, to listen to some of the concerns and streamline these processes and make this workable for more people. So I thought that was really great.
I agree. And going back to kind of what Jennifer was saying, I think my big takeaway, you know, there seems to be recognition here that a lot of this stuff has just taken way longer than it should. And like years later, we're still kind of in the cycle of going over the same things over and over again. And there seems to be a renewed focus on like what practical steps need to happen in order for this to actually lift off the ground. And I think like, you know, the focus on infrastructure and the fact that there are some firm deadlines set for the FAA on like, you know, adopting rules for powered lift operations within 7 months sort of sends a message that like Congress expects them to start actually doing something about this because we're falling behind globally and we don't want to be, you know, outpaced by China and other competitors.
Yeah, I echo all of that, and I thought my biggest takeaway was the emphasis on the workforce development. I think, you know, we're all seeing continual media stories and conversation about the shortage of pilots and lack of workers in the air traffic controller space. And so I thought it was really great that Congress seems to be listening and spent a lot of time kind of thinking through ways to develop the workforce. And actually, I just saw a question in the chat about the workforce and training of pilots, and I don't remember seeing it. We didn't look specifically into pilot training, but I do remember seeing that there was a study allocated to look at virtual reality training for air traffic controllers. So I'm sure there's probably something in there regarding pilot technologies as well. So they are thinking about these new technologies and how to kind of integrate into the workforce. And so I think that's really exciting and a great place for Congress to be looking at.
That is how we're going to advance with that element of that training and how is it going to be applied on the various verticals in the industry. And so that was a great question from Bill. Looks like we have, well, I'm not sure if this is a question or a statement from Vic, something about AAM advancement. Vic, if you wanted to open up, we're running near the top of the hour, but I didn't know.
I need to learn how to type. It's no, with Michael with Michael Whitaker being the new FAA administrator, I think his background in AAM is really going to be a huge help advancing it. So it's kind of nice to see somebody who knows a little bit about the UAS industry at the top of the pile.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. We've had him speak at a number of events here at Akin, and he's so knowledgeable about the industry, knows the people and the players and the issues really well. So I totally agree. Yeah. Progress.
Awesome. It is exciting to see what is coming down the pipeline and opportunities that are available. And like you said, Jennifer, some of them are just a continuation, but hopefully we'll see some resolve come from all of this and paving new paths. So a lot of people saying great information into our chat. I can't thank you enough for joining us here today. We look forward to diving deep by getting the information directly from you. And there's that Autonomous Akin newsletter. Definitely sign up for that. I can put the information in the chat again and put that out there for everyone. I would love to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It was great information. Thank you for sharing with us. And I'd like to thank everybody for just joining us here today so we can all gain that little bit of knowledge of moving forward in the industry. So thank you.
And somebody asked if the presentation would be available. They joined late. Yes, it absolutely will be. And all of our contact information is there. So, you know, do reach out if you want to get on our newsletters or our client alerts. Happy to share.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you. And I hope everybody has a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week. That kind of wraps it up.